we've done this, and this. So we're gonna go over constructors now. And a constructor is basically just it's a fancy method that does what we've done down here all in one step. And it makes our lives a lot easier. So say, and the good thing about, one more thing. The good thing about airplanes is, or classes is, and this is the main reason for using this. Otherwise, we could just program all of this into we could just make a variable for wingspan, model, passenger, location, fuel, etc. Right? We can just make variables if we were doing function programming. But the good thing about classes is you can reuse them. You can create multiple objects at the same time. So that's why I did plane 1, right? You can have plane 2. And you can give plane 2 its own wingspan. Not 100, we'll say 150. 150 yards or feet or whatever, right? Oh, sorry, my bad. You have to declare the object first. Obviously, you have to create the object before you give it attributes. But yeah, we'll get to a point where you can declare the attribute, and when you're declaring it, you give it attribute. Declare the object when you're declaring, give it attributes at the same time. But for now, just to show, prove a point, create plane 2 variable, and we make a new airplane object. And now you have 2 airplanes, because there's more than one airplane in the world. And if you're running an airline, you probably have more than one airplane. Otherwise, you wouldn't have an airline. So you need to create multiple planes. You would need to track multiple planes to keep track of your entire fleet. So instead of creating an entirely new variable or creating a dictionary of different airplanes, you could create a new object of an airplane. And that new object you can give different attributes to. So, and you don't necessarily have to do the same. Actually, Python's very flexible, so we could like copy and paste just the location and then like the fuel capacity if we want to use our method. So we don't even need the wingspan at this point. So we'll say the location of this airplane is in Dubai, and then the fuel capacity, because it has to fly longer distances, we'll say it's 5,000 liters. So now you have 2 airplanes, and these airplanes have their own specific attributes. Plane 2 has its specific location, and plane 1 has its specific location. And you can now, you don't need to create a new variable for each airplane you make. You can just create, I mean you do, but you don't need to make a new variable for its location, its fuel, and its passenger capacity. Now you have a way of kind of modeling all of this with a simple class, with a simple object. And then obviously these need to be changed to plane 2. But you can do the same thing that you did with plane 1. You can call the function that we created. So fly airplane, and then you can move this to Los Angeles, right? Right, so how you spell Los Angeles? Angeles, my bad. Okay, Los Angeles. So now we have this airplane has flown to Los Angeles, and plane 1, our original plane, has flown to New York. So if we wanna, we can print the location of each of our planes, and obviously they're going to be different because they're in different cities. If you look down here, it says New York and Los Angeles. So that's kind of the beauty of having an object. You can make different kinds of objects, and you can make a lot of them. You can keep on making them, and you don't need to create new variables for each one of them. You don't need to make separate variables for all of these attributes, because that could get really tedious really quickly. And if you were using a dictionary, it would be less tedious, but it wouldn't be as easy for people to understand, for users to understand it. But now you have an ability to create different objects and give them attributes. So essentially this is kind of slow. If you see, there's we had to create the object and then give it attributes. What we're going to learn now is a kind of a fancy method. It's called a constructor, and the constructor constructs objects. See, so instead of having to create a airplane this way, there's a default. By the way, there's a default constructor. It's not written here, but essentially there's a constructor being called here. But we can create our own constructors, which is what everyone does, right? We can create a constructor so that we can both create the object and also give it values for all of these attributes at the same time. So we don't have to, this step is too tedious. And how we do that is with a special little function called Init. And it goes, it's the same. You start with def, underscore, underscore, and it gives you this whole entire list. If you look at these, they all have the underscore, underscore, then a word or the whatever you call the method, underscore, underscore, and then the self, the parentheses. So these are kind of fancy functions. They're special methods, special fancy methods. They are they have like assigned like when I make def init, and then see, it kind of turns a different shade of purple. This is a special one. It has a certain kind of purpose, I guess you could say, and it's not. This one is not. It's not like what we've built. It's not one we've built. It's one that's kind of in Python that we use to do other things. I guess this is kind of like a custom function that we built specific to our class, but this init method is usable for all classes when you're doing stuff. And you're going to use init whenever you create a class, because that's just how, yeah, you're always going to have a constructor. You're always going to make your own constructor. So in this case, it gives itself here. You can actually change this variable self. You can change it to whatever you want as long as you stick with it. See, it turns purple. As long as you stick with it as you work in the constructor. But we'll use self because it's a convention. So, and everyone else does it, so you don't want to confuse your readers. So we have this is just kind of how you create a constructor. And in the constructor, you can give your airplane initial values, initial attributes. So what we had before was wingspan, model, spelled wingspan wrong, model, passenger, cap, and then location and fuel. So these are just parameters inside the method. It's the same as having like this here, new location. They just so happen to be the same. And then what we do to give the airplane like the attributes, essentially what we're doing is this, but up here we're doing this so that we don't have to do it in a separate step, and you'll kind of see what I mean later. But what's happening is we just need to assign the attributes values. So self is so that we're referring to the object that we're creating here, and then we can give it wingspan, right? So this, it looks kind of confusing because these are the same name, but this doesn't have to be wingspan, and this doesn't have to be wingspan either. It just so happens that, you know, we can make it like wingspan as long as you change this. But you're gonna want to name it wingspan, so when your person who's using your code is looking at your function, it makes sense to them. And these two are the same. That's why they're highlighted. This parameter is being assigned here, and then it's being assigned to the attribute. So if that kind of makes sense, these two are this is just the parameter being called, and then this is the attribute in the object. And then we can do the same thing for model and passenger capacity, and alright, should be the same here, and we can just keep on going, and this is location, and then, man, why did we do airplanes? There's so many attributes. We probably could get rid of a couple of these. Don't really make a difference, but all right, there you go. That's your constructor done. So what we've created is, you don't need this. What we've created in our airplane class is a new method. It's a constructor method. And now what you'll be able to do is when you're creating an airplane here, you can give it values. So let's see. Why don't we do it for plane 2? We have already plane 1. So just to show you that it does the same thing as what we're doing here, we can give it some attributes. So it's going to be the same when you're creating the airplane plane 2 object. So airplane parentheses, and then in the parentheses you can give it all these values: wingspan, model, passenger capacity, location, and fuel. So we could say like 150. Model would be a Airbus A330. Passenger capacity is greater, probably like 350 people. Location is now in, where do we have it? Like Dubai. We'll say it's in we'll say London or something, right? And then fuel is 3,500 liters. And now what we've done in this line here is we've essentially done what we've done in these 6 lines. Basically we've cut down on our code, and it's doing the same exact thing as creating the object and then giving it different attributes. You can actually Python's really flexible. You can actually even though you have a constructor here, you can still give it another attribute, like what would be another airplane attribute? I don't know, speed or something. They fly at the same speed, but say it's like a propeller plane, so it flies slower. We can still do it like what we've done. You can give it another attribute, which is really flexible with Python, right? This would probably be in a string or something, like 450 knots. We've given this plane 2 object another attribute for speed, even though we didn't do it for plane 1 and we didn't do it up here in the constructor. You're usually not going to do it because it gets confusing. What usually when you're coding, you're not going to have you're not going to do any of this. Oh, not what I want to do. Comment that out. All you're going to do is just this line here, because it simplifies everything. One line, you created an airplane object and you've given it attributes. And obviously the airplane object is going to have the fly plane. So this, comment this out. If we do it over again, say plane 2 fuel, just to show it works. You run it. It's flown to Los Angeles, and it now has a fuel of 1750 reduced from 3,500 liters. So that's kind of an overview. That's the very basics of those are the very basics of creating your objects.